environmental environmental monitoring, meaning how do we deploy large teams of robots out in nature to do interesting things in terms of figuring out what's going on in the world around us. So that's me professionally. I also happen to believe that human beings are deeply multidimensional. What we see professionally is just one facet of who we are, right? So I'm married to a poet. I'm a father of twins. I have twin daughters who are seniors in college right now. They're doing this circus aerial acrobatics. So I'm a circus dad. I play soccer. In fact, my ambition for the longest time, I still secretly think it's my ambition is to become a professional soccer player, but that never really panned out. I have a request because I really like hiking and I look forward to exploring the nature out here in the Chapel Hill area. So if you have a favorite hike, you should reach out and let me know about it. So that's me, right? I roboticist, engineer, really like getting people together, do a little bit of things on the side, but that's who I am. Now, why did I end up at Carolina? There are a few things that were happening at the same time. One is really this idea of I was looking for a university that had a few different things going on. Oh, I'm getting texts about hikes. I appreciate that. Cody Jacobson, thank you. Uh, no, I was looking for a university that had a few different things going at the same time. One is I needed a university that was truly excellent to matter. And Carolina is extremely highly ranked. I also really wanted a university with an exceedingly strong brand. And Carolina is the oldest public university in the US. I don't think it's possible almost to get a stronger brand. Whenever you go anywhere on the planet, including in Madrid, I may add, you'll find someone walking around with a Tar Heels baseball cap or sweatshirt, and that is truly powerful. I also wanted a university that was hungry, that even though it's a historic place, had this sense of we're still innovating, we're not done. There is swagger and ambition just built into the DNA of the university. And everything I'd heard about Carolina seemed to indicate that this was the case. I started the interview process, and I gotta say, I fell in love with this place very quickly. People just really wanted Carolina to matter, really had big ambitions for who we could be as a university, and it's contagious. It's really fun to be part of a place that is storied, is historic, but also is hungry and is not done yet. So that's where I showed up. I should also say that I am a major believer in the value and the importance of the public research university. What happens on a campus like Carolinas, and I think particularly at Carolinas, really matters, right? Sometimes it's a slog, right? It's a grind and it's annoying and it's exhausting what we do, but you know what? Then you look out and you see these students walking across campus and you remember that what we do in our classrooms, what we do on our campus can transform people's lives. They can transform families' lives. It can even transform communities. And that is real power. So on the educational side, we have this ability to change the trajectories of people's lives. That's powerful. The public piece, though, that I really like is how we are connected also to the community around us through service, right? I think that is something that it's always resonated with me. So there also you have a lot of importance. And then you add the research and the innovation and the stuff that happens in our labs. It really has the potential to change the human experience for the better. So taken together, I am really a major fan of the public research university. And if you squint, at a very high level, the job of the provost is kind of easy. It's my job is just to be a fierce and loud champion of everything good that happens on our campus, to help people be successful, to celebrate people's successes, and hopefully make life a little bit easier by sometimes making the bureaucracy less overbearing, right? Practically, I know that it's not that easy, but I actually view my job really deeply as supporting the people that make Carolina great. Students and faculty, and now we get to the employee forum, staff. You cannot do world-class teaching, world-class education without world-class staff. And I gotta say, sometimes people in academic leadership positions forget to mention that, but it's not to be taken for granted, right? It is absolutely not to be taken for granted. And everything I've seen so far, by the way, I love seeing the little hearts floating up in Zoom. Sometimes, like, let's see if I can. Yeah, okay, that was my attempt at a heart. Yeah, see, that was my hearts. Uh, anyway, no, it should not be taken for granted. And I gotta say, I think as much as my job is to celebrate faculty and students, it has to be to celebrate and support staff, which is also why I was so happy to be here in at my first week at the employee forum. In fact, my ambition initially as provost is I'm not going to be locked up in the South building. I have a rather aggressive first 90 days where I'm trying to be out as much as possible. There is a new LinkedIn and Instagram page for the provost where we're documenting my bucket list. I have already drunk or had taken a sip from the old well. I'm trying to be out as much as humanly possible, learning as much as possible of what happens on this campus, but also connecting with the people that make Carolina great. Again, faculty, students, and capital S staff. So thank you for all the incredible work you do. I also want to say thank you because I have felt extraordinarily welcome from day one. I've already started saying that Carolina is not a normal place. And I mean that in a positive way. This is a place where people support each other, where people are kind, but also people care, right? I mean, and caring sometimes means people push, but from where I'm sitting, as long as you come from a place of caring about the place, push as hard as you want. And I realize that sometimes you'll be pushing at me, but that's okay as long as I feel that we're moving from a place of caring. So I think I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you for letting me speak. I know there is a little bit of time about Q&A, so I happy to take that. But I'm looking forward to being there in person next time and meeting all of you in person. So thank you.
I don't know if you could hear, but there's applause in the room. So thank you
Oh,
so much
wonderful.
for
I'm
your,
seeing the virtual applause here.
yes. So just share. It's weird to be able to have to say sharing the in-person applause since you can't hear that part. But there we go. We got plenty online. I am very much looking forward to you, and I think the chancellor and the vice chancellor for finance and operations would say, I do push. I'm glad you are okay with that, but it always does come from a place of advocating for staff. And so I am very much looking forward to working with you in that regard and on how we can together support and celebrate our amazing staff here at the university.
Yep.
I do have a hand up, and who would that be? Whoever has their hand up. Oh, please go ahead.
It's me.
Hi, Keith. Of course, it's Keith. Keith always has something to say, by the way, and he's fabulous.
Hello.
Well, thank you. First of all, welcome to Carolina. It's great to see you again. I sat in on interviews.
Yeah.
So, I first of all, I love that you categorized the provost's job as easy. Um,
At the high
I
level.
hope that you keep that because challenge accepted. But no, this is more of a this is not a function well, it's kind of a functional job question, but it's more just to understand you and help reconcile your background with being provost. I know a lot of provosts still teach a class or two, but you're coming from Georgia Tech and UC Irvine to a university that has relatively zero. We do have biomedical engineering. Like we have no engineering. Um, how is your experience with being a professor of engineering and a dean of engineering? How does that translate to being provost? Because I'm just curious about that. And what are you going to do to sort of satisfy that teaching itch if you still have it? You may not, you may be like, I'm done, but I don't know. Just curious.
So I think that's a lovely question. So first of all, I have the itch. Not only do I have it, I think it's really important that if you are an administrative a leader on campus and you are a professor, you need to teach because professors teach. I think it's really important to be grounded in that way. So, and I've always also personally, sometimes the job is kind of hard. And one way of always, I think, staying grounded and finding meaning in what you do is when you're in a classroom, you really, it's instant. You really feel that you're part of something bigger and deeply meaningful. So not only do I have the itch and I think it's fun, it's also almost therapy for me to every now and then be be in the classroom. So I'm going to keep teaching. I'm also going to maintain a small lab. Because I also think that professors do research. It's part of the job description. And in particular, if I'm going to be leading an organization where I'm telling people things about teaching and research, I need to live it myself because otherwise I have no real skin in the game. So that's the one part. You're asking about engineering, and I think that's completely fair. I should start by saying I'm not an entirely normal engineer. I have an undergrad degree in philosophy. I have always felt that engineering is at its best when it's connecting across other disciplines. So, for instance, when I was at UC Irvine, I'm close, please. No, no cleaning. Sorry, sorry. The maid just showed up at the hotel room. Uh, so I at UC Irvine, I've stood up these institutes. So one is the Institute for Engineering plus Society that are looking at societal scale questions around AI and engineering. I've worked on the Institute for Engineering plus Arts because I really like these connections. I have one on engineering plus sustainability. So I always feel like engineering isn't a standalone, it's connected. So having said that, I'm also pushing for there to be an engineering aspect of life on campus. We're not going to stand up a traditional school of engineering, but one can certainly take what's going on in the health enterprise, for instance, and add more of an engineering component. We're looking at pharmacoengineering, so engineering principles in pharmacology. We're looking at engineering around environment, so environmental engineering. The data science piece here is really strong, so kind of a more data science and engineering or computer engineering is a natural place. So there will be some aspects there. And there's a question about the connection to NC State. I happen to be really good friends with their dean of engineering, and maybe I haven't been trained enough in that I'm supposed to dislike Duke and NC State. I think we should like each other and work together. There's real power in the
You do.
triangle. So yeah, fine. Uh, so my incredibly long way of saying also, my faculty appointment is in computer science. So I am going to be teaching in computer science because robotics can live there as well. So good question, and I appreciate it. I will learn. There we go.
Too many alumni on here, Magnus. Not happening.
And collaboration is permitted academically,
Yeah,
but not on sports. Let's just be clear.
yeah, yeah.
And you are aware there is a game tomorrow?
I am. I'm sadly not going to make it back in time for it, but while I
Gotcha.
have the podium, I got to share something that so I went to so I'm a drummer also. I play the drums and I went to the basketball game on Tuesday. And I don't know if can you see this picture?
Oh, that's fabulous. I love
This
it.
is
We
me playing
can.
the drums with the student orchestra. That was cool.
That is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Do I have any questions from the room? Ellie? And then Megan.
This is not really a question, but more of a comment, and on the same vein of Keith. My name's Ellie Alexander. I'm the department manager of business officer in the Department of Economics, which is in the college. And you mentioned so many things, undergraduate education, the fact that you have an undergraduate degree in philosophy, which I love to hear. I just want to sort of highlight in this time where we speak about things like engineering, AI, data science, and a focus on sort of return on investment in especially undergraduate majors, that we don't lose sight of the intrinsic value of so many different types of education at the university for the sake of that education and knowledge. So before I worked in economics, I actually worked in classics. I've worked in global studies. So the staff here are so varied. Most of us, I would agree, don't have degrees in engineering, but rather in liberal arts. And that makes us so much more like able to do our jobs and adjust. So as provost, I hope to feel some push to recognize and to keep recognizing the things that make Carolina great outside of those things that sort of quote unquote make money. And so that's just my plug of, I hope that we can continue to focus on that for the sake of the faculty, the staff, and the students.
So I really, really like that you brought that up. So the reason I left Georgia Tech for UC Irvine was I got to Georgia Tech is an institute of technology, and I really believe in the value of a comprehensive university and particularly the liberal arts, right? So I wanted to be at a place that had flagship strong history, flagship strong economics, flagship strong philosophy, flagship strong psychology, right? So I have been drawn to that, and you talked about intrinsically. I think so I have no qualms at all about being loud and proud about the value of a liberal arts education that is not measured in money. In fact, I keep talking about the way we should measure what we do is in impact, and impact can be understood in many different ways, including how it transforms people's lives. Right? So impact is the name of the game for me. Having said that, even in a field that is so technical like AI right now. So the CEO of Anthropic, which is one of the main AI companies, he came out recently and he said, here are the two things he's looking for in people working in AI: problem solving and creativity. Not computer science, right? Not programming skills, because that is almost beginning to become obsolete in the world of generative AI. Problem solving and creativity. To me, that's the liberal arts right there, or at least a big part of it. So you talked about intrinsic value. I 100% agree. I also think there is an extrinsic value in it. So no problem. I mean, you'll get a fierce advocate also for the liberal arts, both for its own sake and for what it does in the future of I mean, a high tech. I think the humanities are actually going to see a renaissance and a resurgence because of where we are right now.
Megan?
Okay. Good morning. I know this is your introductory meeting, so I don't want to like push too hard, but I did, when I first joined the forum, I vowed to make sure that I use every chance I get, every platform I get to stress the issues of my constituency to the upper administration as much as possible. So what I want to say is that currently facilities is the lowest paid workers, housekeeping, grounds, maintenance, construction is who I represent. And currently we are basically going over the edge of a cliff, losing institutional knowledge, losing the amount of people and money that we need to be able to function. And I've been pushing this for maybe like 4 years now before I even joined the forum. And there hasn't seemed to be any kind of progress. And what I've seen is we keep hitting a wall because of state policy with increasing wages. And point blank, that is the root cause of everything that is happening in facilities. And I know that sounds crazy to the people at the top, but you're not going to be able to change it any other way than increasing wages. And the only way to increase wages is to change the policies, the state policies. So we need advocacy from your level to be able to achieve that.
Yeah, I hear you. I actually wrote, so I've started taking notes. This falls under the category of things that I don't know enough about to say anything intelligent, except I have written down that I'm going to look into it. And one of the things that I tend to be fairly good at is actually closing the loop and circling back. So all I'm doing at this point is saying, I hear you. I will return with something intelligent to say about this at our next time. But thank you for bringing that up. And I should also say, you have an opportunity to advocate right here, and you should take it. So I think I'm glad you did.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so very much. I know it is mid-afternoon, or I think 2:30 or 3:30. I can't remember what time it is in Spain.
3:30.
3:30, excellent. All right. So getting close to, I'd say enjoying the evening, but not if it's raining. But thank you so very much for joining us. We are very much looking forward to working with you, and I certainly am looking forward to meeting with you when you are back in the States.
Excellent. Thank you for having me.
All right, have a great afternoon.
Thanks.
All right, I am now going to turn the mic over to the very patient Melanie from Sustainability, correct? All right, let me pull up your slides. Give me just a second. They are somewhere. Well, I'll hand over the mic while I pull that up.
And I'll thank the provost for teeing up sustainability in a few different ways. And just while we're pulling up the slides, I'll share a little bit about my backstory. I came back to school around the age of 30 to get my undergrad here at Carolina. I wanted to be an astrophysicist and had a change of heart in the middle of my time here, and decided to focus on renewable energy. And so I ended up taking a position after graduation in Sustainable Carolina, which is the university's sustainability office. And I just want to, try to quickly run through a few things, a little bit about who we are. Here I am. So my title right now is Sustainability Analyst. That means that I process all of the data that comes into the office. So primarily the greenhouse gas inventory for campus, but lots and lots of other data, and I do lots of other things. We also have Langley Smith, who is our program specialist, and I'm going to talk about some of her programs. And then Abigail Brewer is our communications and engagement specialist. On this slide, I'm going to share a little video from our Chief Sustainability Officer, Mike Peeler. And let's see. Let me know if you can't hear the audio. There should also be captions in the YouTube video.
On Earth Day in 2020, our Chancellor established the Carolina Sustainability Council to advise him and the rest of the university on our progress towards our sustainability goals. At the same time, he asked me to serve as the university's Chief Sustainability Officer and to lead Sustainable Carolina, our new strategic initiative around sustainability. From its inception, the Carolina Sustainability Council harnessed expertise across the university, including solar energy, environmental finance, energy life cycle assessment, sustainable enterprise, and much more. The Sustainable Carolina staff works within our strategic framework and has expertise spanning all areas of sustainability. It's housed within the Institute for the Environment, and it serves as the hub for campus sustainability. Through Sustainable Carolina, we track data and report on the university's progress towards our goals. We engage and build new partnerships both on and off campus to understand the needs of the university and the greater community. And we offer distinctive educational opportunities, which allow students to experience the living lab within campus and learn incredibly valuable lessons around balancing sustainability and modern life. In 2021, Sustainable Carolina released an updated climate action plan. It was our first since 2009 and accelerated our goal for carbon neutrality by 10 years. Then in 2022, we released a new water plan, which outlined how campus is connected to our watershed and laid out goals to improve our water use and our water reuse. For our campus, sustainability isn't just a word, it's a mindset. We know that there are small actions that will help us reach our sustainability goals. Our job at Sustainable Carolina is to help steer the broader efforts at the university, but also to help provide insights to individuals about how they might be able to help. It isn't just an environmental ethic, but it's also about operational efficiency, reducing waste, improving water use, and decreasing energy consumption all lead to economic benefits that help the university's bottom line. For Carolina to reach its goals, our campus community needs to join together in pursuit of our shared mission and values. For more information, please always go to our website, sustainable.unc.edu.
All right, and just before I move on, I want to share the idea that a lot of sustainability, whether it's at the university or elsewhere, really has different levels of responsibility, right? And so a lot of the goals that we have at the university are the responsibility of the university at some of the highest levels. But we often get questions from especially students, but also faculty and staff about how they can get involved. And so that's a lot of the reason that I'm here today is to talk about some of our programs where you all can participate. So we have two redeveloped programs that we piloted last year, Sustainable Office and Sustainable Labs. And what we found in the past, we had low participation, and some of the feedback that we got was that there were a lot of barriers. So especially in like the Sustainable Labs program, a lot of laboratories would say that the program didn't necessarily apply to their work. And we're still getting some of that feedback from, say, like computational labs where they don't have, energy intensive equipment like centrifuges and ultra low temperature freezers and that kind of equipment. But we redeveloped these programs so that they apply to everyone. So the idea is you complete, it's like a 45-minute training module in Carolina Talent. Anyone can complete that at any time, but to get your lab or office certified sustainable, at least one person has to complete that training. And then we will meet you in your workspace for an audit. It takes about an hour typically. And what we find is that most people are already doing a lot of the work. So it's not us asking you to do more work, but we come in and provide guides and posters and stickers to go on some appliances that just encourage behaviors like energy efficiency and water efficiency. And then once you've completed 75% of the applicable items, then you are certified. And speaking of freezers, if anybody does work in a space that uses ultra low temperature freezers, I wanted to pitch the Efficient Freezer Rebate Program. So if you're not familiar with the Renewable Energy Special Projects Committee, they are a student organization that collects $4 per student per semester. So they get a hefty amount of money every year. And while their name is Renewable Energy, they also fund energy efficiency and energy education. And one of their programs is a freezer rebate program for these ultra low temperature freezers. You can get up to $7,000 to offset the cost of a more efficient freezer. And they just extended the deadline for the spring applications to March 20th. So if you need to replace a freezer in your workspace, definitely send them your application to resbcfreezerrebate@gmail.com. And then another program that is really new, but we're getting a lot of participation from students, especially undergraduates, but it's open to everyone on campus, faculty, staff, undergrad, graduate students, is Sustainable Carolina Ambassadors. So I've just highlighted here the employee steps. Each step is different for different kinds of Tar Heels because we all have different roles on campus. And I'm not going to read through all of these, but essentially we have an orientation that we do. And then once you complete orientation, we have you complete a couple of other steps around energy, transportation, waste and recycling, and then a few other things. And if any of those steps are inaccessible for any reason, we can help find a substitute in the same area. Once you complete all the steps to become an ambassador, you are then eligible to submit a project proposal. So we'll fund up to 5 projects per year for now until we get more funding of up to $1,000. And so this can be all sorts of different things. So if you want to, do a sustainability art project, I have pictured here a plastic time machine that someone sourced an old vending machine and turned it into this plastic time machine where you put your plastic water bottle into one side, and then it dispenses the water bottle as it will look in like 1,000 years, which is the same, right? So it's this interactive interactive art exhibit, which is pretty fun. Or maybe, you want to do some research or tack on a sustainability element to your research, or maybe you just want a new microwave in your office and you're like, I want to get an energy efficient microwave. You can submit your project to us and hopefully get some funding. So we've had some undergraduates definitely complete all of the steps, and we've had some staff complete some of the steps. And it's meant to be, it's going to take some time to complete all the steps. And then I just wanted to quickly speak to AI, just because it has been coming up a lot in so many settings. These are, some of the questions that come up, especially, data centers are a big topic right now. We do have data centers on campus, but that's primarily for Connect Carolina. So the sort of environmental components to AI aren't going to impact campus directly, but obviously there will be indirect impacts. But definitely things like, higher electricity rates and things like that for residents are an issue. But I just wanted to direct your attention to ai.unc.edu. If you scroll all the way to the bottom of that page, there's this little disclaimer about environmental impacts and just, using AI responsibly, especially generative AI. But I'm not an AI expert, and so I don't want to, present myself in that way and try to speak to some of these issues, especially since my role is sustainability on campus. But I wanted to direct you to the experts page on ai.unc.edu. There's lots of folks who are much more knowledgeable about the environmental impacts of AI. And our comms and engagement specialist is currently on parental leave, but you can still email her or me if you want to amplify any of the sustainability work that you are doing on campus. And please follow us on socials.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions? You need to mic.
Hold on. Is this one working? Okay, great. Thanks so much for coming. We've been wanting to engage with the work of Sustainable Carolina for a while here at Employee Forum. The very low temperature freezer program, did I hear you correctly? That's twice a year that will be open to application?
have spring and fall application cycles because it's undergraduate students who are approving those applications. So they're here in the spring and the fall. So like I said, and they just extended it. They had it close at the end of February, but they did not get enough applications. So there is money on the table. And like I said, it's up to $7,000 is the max. It is 35% of that cost. And they have some approved models. So it's pretty straightforward. You just go through and say, okay, I want this kind of freezer. And then you have to state your need. So did you have a freezer, break down or something like that? They also do emergency funding. So if it is, after that application cycle has ended, they can still approve emergency funds. And so they may do that if they don't get enough applications this cycle. And then there's an emergency in April, they may approve that. So
Thank you.
Hi, I work as a sustainability or a waste technician in recycling. And from my perspective, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of effort going into sustainability at the bottom. It seems like a lot of the effort is being put in at the top, like with energy reduction and stuff that we can't see that's like, hypothetical out there. And you guys have the numbers and you see all the moving parts. So I get that you have a different perspective, but I'm wondering if you guys have considered maybe trying to make more of an effort to include those low-hanging fruit parts of sustainability that we see every day on campus, especially with staff. And I know you mentioned and staff in the presentation, but I don't know if it seems like a lot of your participation probably comes from student faculty, not so much staff. But I feel like there's a lot of room for growth and expansion in sustainability if you include staff, and if it's not just voluntary, you go talk to people and not force them to implement, but give them incentive to enforce sustainability on the ground. It would make a lot of impact.
yeah, so I have a lot of answers to that. And so one is we have a sustainability coalition, which Eliza joins our monthly meeting. And so that is, it was originally it was staff focused, and then student organizations wanted to participate in that as well. But that's a monthly meeting that we have where primarily folks who are doing the sustainability work, those, waste coordinators, the transportation coordinators, energy folks, get to come and we can all talk together in a round table. I mean, it's Zoom, but talk about how we can all support each other. And I will say I meet regularly with, I have monthly meetings with the transportation folks. We have very, very close relationships with the dining services sustainability manager, the Office of Waste Reduction and Recycling. I'm through RESPC meet regularly with energy services and energy management. So it is a lot of our work is staff based. It's just that some of these programs or the people asking how can they get involved tend to be the undergraduate students. And part of the reason I'm here today is to share about all this work and hopefully get more people aware of what we're trying to do. And that's why we have this new incentive program, which is, hey, we'll give you $1,000 for your project if you complete these steps, so that we can ensure that you understand sustainability broadly on campus. So that's part of the reason I'm here today is to broaden our reach to more staff outside of those people who typically do sustainability work.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. I heard a bunch of people that are already in sustainability going to these meetings, which makes sense. Yeah. But also there's a lot of areas for improvement in housekeeping, grounds, the people that are not going to hear about or have the ability to join those meetings and provide feedback or hear about what is happening in sustainability. So I know you guys are probably stretched pretty thin like everybody else, but I feel like if you advocate that aspect of sustainability and push for that aspect of sustainability, that would be, it would have an immense impact on campus.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do have, working relationships with the grounds folks at different levels. So like Todd and Crystal in grounds, we work together to host different events. If you're not familiar with Battle Grove, we go out there a couple times a year, and I've had more ad hoc meetings with them, but I consider them, colleagues. But yeah, I would say what their work is sustainability. So that's exactly why I'm here today, is to try to broaden that awareness.
Is this working? Yeah. No. Please feel free to use this as a real liaison. I mean, it can go both ways. If there's something that Sustainable Carolina would like to request that the employee forum give attention to or put energy collaboratively into with you, please do reach out.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. When I was saying I appreciated how patient Melanie was, it was largely because she was going to present in February and very kindly agreed to shift as our meeting ran long. So again, thank you very much. All right, I would now like to turn the mic over to James Orr, our Senior Vice President for Provost, Senior Vice Provost for Student Success. Hopefully I got your title right. If you would come on down to, it's not really a stage, but come on down to the front and I will pull up your slides. And I do appreciate you joining us.
All right. Thank you all so much for having me. Really excited to be able to join you today. I'm going to step back. I did. I was like, I don't have it memorized.
Doesn't work on this one. All right, so we're going to go to plan B. Here we go.
And will it show up here? Okay, excellent. Well, thank you all so much. My name is James Orr, and I'm new to Carolina, fairly new, not as new as Magnus is. But I was hired to provide leadership to the university's strategy for the student experience, from the time in which a student is not even thinking about Carolina all the way through the time in which they graduate. And I'm excited to be here with you today because what I know is that student success and the student experience is really predicated on the success and the experience that we offer to our staff. So thank you all so much. I thought what I would do is to divide the presentation into 3 segments, and I actually do have it memorized, so if we have problems, it's good. And the first is that I'm going to give some information about my background, so who I am and those type of things, and how I think about this work. Then I want to talk about some of the organizational shifts that we've made and why they were important. And then I'll end with some of the big projects and initiatives that we're working on. So we can go to the next slide. A little bit about my background. I bring a unique experience to this role. I've been a faculty member and engaged in teaching and research. My expertise is in higher ed law and policy. Anytime you see a big academic integrity issue that happens across the country, I'm usually one of the people who come in to do some work on that. I spent several years on the board for the International Center for Academic Integrity. I've published on how institutions can develop honor code policies and strategies. But I also have experience on the leadership teams of student affairs, academic affairs, enrollment management, undergraduate education, and graduate education. So I spent a lot of time thinking about how we can best support the experiences of our students across the entire spectrum. I love working in large, complex institutions. I just came from an institution that's one of the largest and most complex in the country. But I love doing that from a people's first mentality. So the work that we do with staff, how we connect with people, I think are so critical. Next slide. So I started on July the 15th, and I've been doing a deep dive learning and listening. I've read every report that's been written about the student experience and student success at Carolina since the 1980s. And I've spoken to a host of groups and all the things that you have to do to really do a deep dive in learning the culture of the institution, because we're such a great institution. And one of the early things that I did is that I established a student success executive group. And that brings together the university executives and leaders who are really focused on aspects of the student experience from the time in which, again, they're not even thinking about Carolina all the way through the time in which they graduate and go into their careers. I've learned so much from that work. So if we go to the next slide, I want to talk to you about what I've learned. First that I've learned is that Carolina, this is a special place, and we are critical to the success of the state. But the second piece that I learned, and I think is so obvious by just listening to your meetings, and the provost and I were having a conversation, and Magnus was telling me that one of the things that's so special about this group in particular is that you're deeply involved in asking questions about the mission of the institution, the core of who we are, how we serve students, how we serve staff, how we even engage faculty. And that's what's special about Carolina. The staff here and everyone who is here, they deeply love Carolina. And it's something that's very important to them. You know, the transformative power of education is something that is also important to me. My mom, she graduated from high school, and she was a valedictorian. My dad didn't graduate from high school. My dad's parents were sharecroppers, and so he had to work on the farm. And my mom didn't have anybody to talk to her about how important college was. And I had this past Thanksgiving, one of the most transformative experiences in my professional career is that I took my dad and my mom on campus. And my dad had been on a few college campuses because one of the things that they said as I was growing up that was important for our family was that they wanted us to have a strong relationship with God, and they wanted us to have an education. And 3 out of the 4 of my parents' children all have doctorates. But my dad was walking around campus, and my dad spent several years in construction. And as he was walking around and I was walking with him, we had some of our grounds workers. They stopped and spoke to him because they see me as I was coming into the office. We even had some of our custodial staff would stop and speak to my dad as I showed him a residence hall. And he was like, son, no. He said, did you say, like, what is this institution ranked? I said, we're the number 4 ranked institution in the country. And he said, wow. He said, I didn't get to go to college, but my prayers were answered. All of my children went to college, and my son works at one of the top institutions in the country. And that just gave me chills because when I walk around campus and meet people, I know that every one of you care about Carolina that much. And you also, when you're doing the work that you're doing, you're not only impacting Carolina, but you're having an impact on the world. And that's why I think the work that I've been brought here to do and the work that Magnus is leading and that the Chancellor is leading is so critical, because we've been successful as an institution. We're the nation's oldest public university, but the world is changing, and I do believe that we can't rest on our laurels. And so part of the work that I've been brought in to lead is to rethink, how do we provide a more robust and comprehensive experience for our students? And I just feel a deep sense of gratitude and honor to be able to do that at this great institution and to do it alongside you. So if we go to the next slide, what I want to do on this next slide is I want to talk about how we're thinking about student success. So part of it is that I'm looking across the university and saying, how do we support the experience of our students, regardless of whether or not those aspects fit into the division of student success or not. But there were some organizational things that we wanted to be able to do to create an integrated approach to how we support students. So if you go to the next slide, one of the things that we wanted to do was to look across the institution and say, how do we work in an integrated way so that we can present an unmatched experience for Carolina students? And that unmatched experience doesn't just mean while they're at Carolina, it also means preparing them for their careers after they leave Carolina, whether that's graduate school or whether that's going to make an impact on the world. Because what we know is that when our students graduate in their second, third, or 10th job in their working career, they will be working in a world that literally does not exist today. So we have to prepare them not only to solve today's problems, but we also have to prepare them to solve the next generation's problems. And what we know is that when students come to Carolina, it not only impacts them, but it impacts their families and their lives. So we worked across to identify ways we could create a strategic approach to integrate, break down the silos, to create that seamless experience for our students. Next slide. When we think about creating a seamless experience for our students and student success, I often have people, they'll come to me and they'll say, creating student success in the experience is student affairs. Like, it's not just student affairs. It is student affairs, right? And you smile in the back because you know it's not just student affairs. Student affairs is a critical component of it, but it's also the mental health and well-being of our students. It's also thinking about, do our students feel like they belong when they come to campus? It's also thinking about their financial well-being. And it's also thinking about that return on investment, because what we know is that when students and families look at college in today's world, they ask three questions. Number one is that if I attend your institution, what will be the outcomes? How will this impact me after I leave the institution? We're really good at that. If you look at our outcome data, we have some really good outcome data. The second question that they ask is, what will the experiences be both inside and outside of the classroom? We know that our students need strong disciplinary depth. They have to understand their field of study, but they also have to have those cross-functional skills that allow them to communicate with people who are different from them, that allows them to lead in very complex environments, that allows them to work together in teams. And then the third question that they're asking is it affordable? What's the return on investment? And I think it's important that we think about those things, because just 2 years ago, we had 8.3 million students and families who applied to college, they were accepted to college, and they chose not to go anywhere. So we as an institution, we as a sector in higher education, we have a responsibility to really think about the experiences that we're offering our students. And I put this diagram up because it really is a holistic experience for our students. So next slide. So one of the things that I've been tasked and thinking a lot is that how do we create a high impact experiences for our students? And we already have really high impact experiences for our students. We're really good at it. But then how do we connect those dots across the institution so that all of our students have those experiences, regardless of where they are in their academic journey? The second question I've been thinking a lot about is that how do we ensure that we have access to data that allows us to intervene and support a student even before they know that they need that intervention and support. And then finally, how can we work better to help our students navigate the university? You see, I was a first generation college student. And so I didn't understand what a provost was, what a bursar was. And I had people who came to college with me, they understood that because they had experiences that I just didn't have. But I don't believe any of our students should have to understand the organizational chart of the university to have access to the services that they need or to navigate our complex institution. Thank you. Next slide. So here's how we're doing that. So what we did is we looked across and I'll show you a org chart in a second so that you can see who the areas are, but there are pillars behind this division of student success that we've created. The first is strategic enrollment management and access. So strategic enrollment management is all the things that you think about. How do we help students get admitted to the institution, and how do we help them navigate the university's processes so that they can graduate? But the access piece is key. What we know is that our state is growing. And not only is our state growing, it's also, you can also see in the numbers that the percentage of North Carolina residents who are enrolled has decreased as it relates to how our state is growing. So I believe that we have an obligation to increase access for North Carolina residents. And I want them to come to Carolina. But we know we can't have every student come to Carolina. So we also have an obligation to increase college going rates in the state of North Carolina. We're positioned well to do that. So in strategic enrollment management, you'll see that focus on access. How do we get into the communities and let students who are like me know that college is possible for them when they're in middle school? How do we help those families in the state of North Carolina know here's what the college process is, and we'll help you navigate that? So strategic enrollment management is one of those. The second pillar is the student experience, and the student experience is what you would think about, that experience that our students have both inside and outside of the classroom. And then the third pillar, which I'm really excited about, is academic excellence. Academic excellence is saying the experiences that our students have inside of the classroom and outside of the classroom, how do we translate those high impact learning experiences through internships, through preparing for careers, and then demonstrate how that will impact the students when they leave Carolina. And then we have two of these sort of what I call more of the administrative pieces, and that's strategy, engagement, and analytics. Happy to talk more about that. And then operational excellence, so that we're operating at a high value, high functioning organization. So if you go to the next slide, just real quick, what that looks like. We have the Division of Student Affairs falls up under student success, enrollment management, as I mentioned before, academic excellence, some special projects to help move the initiatives that we're working on along, operations, and then undergraduate education that sits in the college has a dotted line to student success. Next slide. So I gave you a real quick high-level view of who I am, how we're thinking about student success. We divided that into the pillars of strategic enrollment management and access, the student experience, academic excellence. And now what I'd like to do is just talk about some of the projects that are currently happening that you may hear about, and then I'll end with some questions. The first project is that you probably heard that one of the things that the university is doing is that we're doing a merger between our Student Health Center and UNC Health. We're really excited about that work. There's several work streams that are working to say, how do we take the great work that we've been doing with campus health and we elevate that work so that we have the best world-class, continuing to have the best world-class, but even better services for our students. And a key component of that is that our students, not only while they're here with us, but when they leave as well. So how do we make sure that they have that continuity of care before they come to us, while they're here with us, and then when they leave with us? The target for that integration to be completed is August 2026. We have several groups that are meeting. I put up on the pictures one of the retreats that we had with staff from UNC Health and staff from our campus health center. We've also engaged students and really excited about that work. Next slide. How many of you, well, let me ask this question. Raise your hand if you would say it is very, very hard for students to register for classes. Raise your hand if you would say you heard students complain that it's hard to register for classes or that our systems are clunky. Well, you was like, yeah, you was like, I can agree to that one. That's good. It is getting better, but it's because one of the things that we're doing is that we're doing some significant updates to our Connect Carolina platform, and we're creating degree planners, building a seamless application center so that our students, that when they're registering for classes or our academic advisors are supporting students, they can better plan for that. I'm really excited and really happy with the work that's doing. Happy to answer questions and tell you more about that. But I know we're getting close to time, so I'll go to the next slide. We've revamped the ways in which we think about onboarding for our students. Because the university is so big and so complex, sometimes, and we're so, and you know, I mean, we're the number 4 ranked public institution in the country. And one of the things that I found when I got here is that sometimes we acted that way. We acted with this air that, hey, we're the number 4 ranked institution in the country when we had our visitors. And so what we wanted to do is to reshape how we thought about that and create a holistic, seamless visitor and onboarding experience for our students where we clearly communicated that, yeah, we're great as an institution, but we're very welcoming and we want you as part of our campus and part of our culture. So to do that, what the university has done is that we've made significant revisions to our campus visits programs. I am so proud of the work that the team in undergraduate admissions and the staff in marketing and communications has done to create a really robust campus visitor program that we're going to make some changes. And so in the fall, we're actually going to have a day where we invite faculty and staff to come and just see a peek of what a campus tour looks like. And so I would encourage you all to be on the lookout for that and to see the great work that our staff did. The second thing that we're doing is that this Saturday, tomorrow, we have the first admitted student day of this cycle. And it is going to be absolutely phenomenal. We take all the parts of what it means to be a member of the Tar Heel community and we package it in for one pack-filled day for prospective students and parents. I mean, we showcase the amazing work that our staff do, that our faculty do, our students, our athletic programs, all of those things, we're wrapping in that into how we do the Admitted Student Day. We're also making revisions to our campus orientation program. We created an online orientation program and an on-campus program because, as you know, just like it is when you go through your HR training and you have all those modules that you have to do, our students often experience the same thing. And so what we wanted to do is to cover a curriculum for how our students could be onboarded to the university, to say, what should we cover with you when you go on a campus visit? What should we cover with you after you've been admitted? Then what should be covered after you have been admitted and you've signed up and attended orientation? And the next slide is then during that first semester that you're with us and you're doing our Campus Thrive courses, what do we need to be covering so that you can be successful? I'm so excited for the work that Donovan Livingston is doing. He's new to this role, really rethinking our Campus Thrive course, such an energetic and an amazing leader. But the Campus Thrive courses are so important for us. Next slide. We want every Carolina student to have what I call the Carolina Advantage. And that Carolina Advantage means that from the day you are admitted, how are we thinking and connecting your career, leadership, student financial well-being, advising, our staff, and our vast alumni network to your experience in ways that are going to allow you to have hands-on, minds-on learning experiences so that when you leave the institution and everybody in the country knows that if you are a student at Carolina, that when they leave the institution, they know their discipline, they're prepared to lead, they can think critically, and they can solve the world's problems that exist today, but not just the world's problems that exist today, but the world's problems that exist years and years from now. My last slide is something else that I'm really excited about, and that is in August of 2026. Well, actually, I'm excited, but I'm a little salty about this. So I'm going to pause and tell you why I'm salty. Do we say Hills? Yeah. So I still haven't let this go yet. I wanted the name, we're going to have a one-stop. And a one-stop for students allows a student to get all the information that they need to do the business of being a student, one location, virtually and in person. They're able to go to a one-stop, and if you need to, let's say you need to drop your class, we can tell you, okay, we can help you drop your class, but if we drop your class, we can look in the system and say, no, when you drop your class, this is how it's going to impact your financial aid. And so you want to make sure that you're full-time and you don't want your financial aid to be impacted. So here's how it will impact your financial aid. Oh, by the way, we can connect you with an academic advisor too to take care of you drop into class, how it impacts your financial aid, and this might impact your graduation. So they can do all of those things in one location. I'm excited about that. The part I'm a little salty about is that I wanted the name to be Hills Connect. And I was going everywhere telling folks that it would be Hills Connect. And then we put together a group of faculty who gave us some feedback, staff who gave us some feedback, and students. And not one group liked Hills Connect. So it's going to be called Hills Hub. And one day I will be able to have a Hills Connect, but it's going to be called Hills Hub. But it's going to be amazing for our students because, as I said earlier, I do not believe that any of our students should have to understand the university's organizational chart to navigate our university. That just shouldn't be the case. And so the One Stop is going to allow us to be able to do that. Last slide. Next steps. We're continuing to work to say, how do we engage and bolster our work around academic excellence? I'm establishing a student group that will consist of the leaders of the major student organizations across campus to serve as an advisor to me. We're continuing to think about how we leverage data and analytics to intervene at the right time for the right student, even before our students know that they need that intervention, and continuing to think about how do we create a no wrong door experience for our students. The One Stop is going to help do that, but I want the faculty, the staff, and everyone across the university to have the resources that they need to point students to get the support that they need. And again, I'm so thankful for the work that you do, and I look forward to the questions that you'll have.
Great, thank you so much. I do have a couple of questions online, so I want to jump to those first and then get to the ones in the room. The first question from Arlene is, are there any students on the Student Success Executive Committee? And how do you get their voices heard?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's several advisory committees that students sit on that I chair, and we're also establishing the Student Success Committee, not the Student Success Committee. I'm sorry. We're establishing the Student Group Committee that will have students from all of our major campus organizations who will serve as advisors to me. The Student Success Executive Committee is really more administrative in nature, so that's probably not the appropriate place, but we do have several other places where we're engaging students and getting their feedback.
And then a comment, at my previous institution, and this is from Kira Jones, an essential part of delivering a seamless student experience was using PeopleSoft notes to capture advising notes. There was an established culture that all meeting notes, no sensitive details, were entered. This way, there was a record of conversations and decisions, so students didn't have to retell their story over and over. And advisors across campus could see a student's path and build on previous conversations. These notes are like clinic notes. Advisors at both the undergrad and grad level use the tool, have been advocating for something like this for years here at UNC. One big problem here is PeopleSoft notes aren't active for grad programs, and there is no culture of consistent documentation. This contributes to the loss of important student info, like exceptions to courses, degree planning, etc., because the info primarily exists in people's email. When someone leaves UNC, that info is lost. If you're changing Connect Carolina, Oops, somebody added a comment which bumped my, if you're changing Connect Carolina, I'd encourage you to explore this tool.
No, thank you. That's really helpful. Part of the work that we're doing under the Students First and Connect Carolina revisions is really looking at how do we make advisor notes where appropriate, more universally accessed, because the point that what we don't want our students to do is to have to retell their story every time is a very important point. So I appreciate that.
All right, Anetta?
Good morning. Thank you for being here today. I wanted to ask you about what your current engagement has been with alumni groups, specifically affinity alumni groups, around your new initiatives and how alumni can or have been impacting student success and recruitment.
Yeah, thank you so much. I've spent a lot of time with our alumni groups. KBIC is a group that I've spent a lot of time with. I think that when we think about telling the Carolina story, and also not just telling the Carolina story, but success for our students while they're here and after they leave Carolina, the alumni are critical parts of that. And in fact, even in the admission process, and this was actually, I can't take credit for this, this was actually initiated and encouraged by Chancellor Roberts, is that we have a program in admissions where our alumni are able to call prospective students and encourage those prospective students to actually enroll in Carolina after they've been admitted. And they're able to do it based on the students that they feel most comfortable with reaching out to. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Ellie?
Yeah, I have more of a logistical question, especially around talking about enrollment as you did and registration really for students. So every year, although more so this year, we face issues with especially large lecture courses being scheduled in classrooms across campus. We don't have enough classrooms. Our student body is growing. Number of buildings isn't necessarily growing fast enough. We have buildings going offline for repair. So more and more, these students are going to be asked to enroll in courses at odd times of day. Let's say not odd is not 8 a.m., but
for Carolina, right?
5 p.m. You know, like first year students, 5 p.m. is an odd time one would expect to be in class. They should be going having lunch with or dinner with their friends. So I guess I'm wondering if you have any plans to help address the issue along with the registrar, along with the provost office, along with the other major units on campus, because we seem to sort of scramble. And we do that, that's what we've been doing for a long time, those of us who've done student scheduling. But as our population grows, as our undergraduate population increases quite quickly, these are going to be problems that are faced each semester, especially in the fall, I would say. And it definitely affects students. I mean, they're not going to want to enroll in some of these courses. They're going to put off their progression towards their degree. It also definitely affects faculty and how they have to adjust their schedules, you know, and their personal lives. So I'm just wondering if you and your office, in conjunction with the registrar, have any plans to try and address that before we can get these new buildings online.
Yeah, 100%. That's such a great observation. And there are committees who, and the registrar's office, Lauren does an amazing job. I always try to shout out staff. And if you don't know Lauren, you should probably try to reach out to Lauren and get to know Lauren. She does an amazing job and is really aware of all the things that are academic policies and programs, those type of things that impact students. But yes, we are engaged in that. To your point, one of the things that I observed very quickly when I came to Carolina is that we have so many areas in which we need to optimize as it relates to space. We offer very few classes before 9 o'clock a.m. Most of our classes are offered on not most, but a lot of our classes are offered outside of what I would call those strategic times, you know? So students may not want to take a class sometimes at 8 a.m., but we may need to offer classes at 8 a.m. So I think part of us thinking about enrollment growth is really optimizing our class offerings Fortunately, I've done a lot of work in that area, thinking about what classes do you need to offer, at what times do you need to offer them, and when and what times a day do you need to offer those courses. So that's a really good observation, and it's something that we are thinking about and we are working on as part of our enrollment growth strategy.
And I would just advocate for some involvement of faculty, staff for sure, but also faculty in that conversation, because they also have ideas and preferences for teaching that go around pedagogy and all that.
Yeah.
So
when we do have faculty in those conversations as well.
All right, I'm going to do a couple more from online and then switch back to the room. Matthew Teal has a couple of questions. I saw undergraduate has a dotted line relationship, but I didn't see the graduate school. What is the plan to ensure graduate students are able to take advantage of these initiatives?
Yeah, absolutely. So as we think about student success, we're thinking about all of our students. The graduate education is very distinctive and different in that a lot of the experiences that our graduate students have are happening actually in the academic college, in the schools. And then our graduate school does great work as serving as a resource of thinking about the student experience and connecting the dots. And Beth and I work very closely together on that. So we are thinking about the success of all of our students.
Also, how will this initiative meet the different needs of transfer students, students with families, and other non-traditional students?
Yeah, it's all of our students. I really think that especially when I think about the one stop is going to be very helpful for our transfer students. Many times our transfer students are coming in and they're not used to Carolina, but to have a location where you can go to and get support for the business of being a student is so important. We continue to have great relationships and work with the transfer center in the college that provides great services for our students. I think this is just going to elevate and provide more robust services for our students.
All right, and what metrics are you using to define and measure success and regularly update the initiatives?
Yeah, so again, I'm new and I'm still going through our listening and learning process, but we are thinking a lot about what those metrics are, and as we continue to move along, we'll have specific metrics.
All right, Sarah, and then
Thank you for being here. Love the presentation. Question about the merger with Campus Health and UNC Health. We heard some staff concerns that they don't have clarity on whether or not they'll get to keep their jobs. Do you have more information on that? People who are already working in that campus health centers and the way that they collaborate with other on-campus groups, and how shifting kind of also about that kind of notes sharing back and forth, because this is a new entity now instead. Also, how will student records and information be freely shared back with campus?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. So what we did is and I'd like to take a step back, because when you think about at least how I believe it's important to do decision making, oftentimes you can do it one or two ways. One, you can say, let's get a small group of people together. They're going to make all the decisions, and then they're going to communicate out, hey, this is what the 4 or 5 of us decided. And whenever you do that, and many times in the private sector, that's how they do things sometimes, you're always going to miss a lot of key information, particularly at a place that's large and complex. But how we approach this one is that we identify the benefits that the merger would provide to our students, particularly for their continuity of care after they leave Carolina. And so what we did is that we said, we've got to work out all of these details. So what does it look like to be a UNC Health employee versus a campus health employee? So we set up about 8 working groups, and those 8 working groups right now are working through each of those questions, and they're actually developing the strategies that will be used to move forward. I don't know, but that's the things that they're working through to identify how that would happen. Yep.
Contextually, I'm going to build on what Sarah's question was, because this is the employee forum. And
Yeah, no.
I am so thrilled as a student, as a parent, as an alum, all these things. And even a child of faculty. I'm so thrilled for anything that brings anything more into the future for our students and all the people who are in the business of education. But again, and this isn't just this presentation, we are hearing many examples of staff positions migrating to UNC Healthcare. They are a separate business entity. Those are separate jobs, and they pay into a separate benefit system. So there is this bell curve of disintegration of support for things that we perceive as a benefit as part of our retirement, as part of our collegial experiences as staff. It's just getting farther and farther away. Now, contextually for you, I'm in the School of Medicine. So, I mean, this is happening a lot. Our communications is migrating over there as part of Service First. And it may be predicated on some really good functional decisions, but the impact on staff keeps being ignored. And so I'm just speaking to why that concern is coming up, because this is actually our first time interacting with you. But that's a context that may be missing from that. And when it's working groups, we always need to know who are on those working groups. How are decisions made utilizing the data that may be coming out of that? If that data does not agree with what leadership decides is going to be the outcome regardless. I'm just verbalizing something that does come up a lot. Please don't shoot the messenger. And thank you for being here.
No, thank you so much for those comments. Yes. Oh.
Hi, it's me. Sorry.
We skipped you. No,
You're
you're good. You're good. Go ahead.
I work supporting graduate students, and I know we touched on this a little bit earlier about how the graduate student experience is so different. So I think I actually have two questions.
Yes.
With the Hill Hub, is the expectation is that the student will be able to come in and one person will be able to discuss all 6, 7 areas? Or would they just kind of follow down through different offices and be able to speak with people whose expertises are in those areas?
Yeah, so what I like to contextualize it by giving financial aid. If a student has federal problems accessing their student loans, they got to call someone in financial aid. But what often happens is the person today that if you go to one of the 2 or 3 locations that we have people in financial aid, if you get the right location and you go there, many times the actions that you take with your financial aid will also impact your class registration. It'll also impact how much you owe the university. And what the One Stop will do is that we have folks who will be able to answer those tier 1, tier 2, maybe tier 3 questions to stop it. But here's your point, which is a good point, is that if I cannot answer your question, what I'm not going to do is, one, I'm not going to try to answer it if I can't answer it, but I'm also not going to tell you to call Tiffany to get your question answered. I'm going to say, let me call Tiffany for you, and I'm going to set up an appointment with Tiffany because Tiffany's the person that knows that. Or let me have you call the graduate school if that's where you went. Here's their number. They can answer it for you. So you leave the One Stop with an appointment set up, you know who you need to contact, and we're not running you across different buildings. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and that goes into my second question, is because, like you mentioned, the graduate school, our students operate primarily within their programs. So is there going to be language that would like direct graduate students, hey, maybe go to your program directly instead of the Hill Hub? Because it gets really complex with graduate level. Like a course could change their eligibility for a lot more things. Yeah. Than in the undergraduate level. We have a lot of requirements for specific degrees.
So how I like to describe it is that whether you're a graduate student or you're a professional student, how you interact with the central university business offices are the same, right? So you may interact with your department on the experience, the classes you should take, if you have a TA-ship, all of those things. But even today, when graduate students or our professional students have questions that impact their federal aid, they are having to, at some point, intersect with the Office of Financial Aid. So nothing changes with the exception of is when you have to have that interaction with whether it's financial aid, whether it's the registrar's office, whether it's our cashier's office. I mean, that's probably a better example, right? Because you got to pay your bill and you're paying your bill at the cashier's office. So you can do that at the one stop. And what you don't have to do is to say, okay, now what floor is the cashier's office on? Okay, now does this impact my financial aid? You're able to go there, and the business that you have to deal with at the Central University, you can do that in one spot. Here's why that's important for graduate students is because graduate students' experiences are so different, many times they feel like they're getting the runaround at the central portions of the university because they're having to go to so many different places. But yes, the one stop, if they come to them and it's something that they need to be speaking with their program about, the one stop is going to be able to say, hey, you should really contact this person in your program. And oh, by the way, would you like me to send them an email on your behalf, set up an appointment on your behalf? It's really giving them that concierge services.
And let Tiffany kind of wrap us up because I know we're running over. So is that?
I'm kind of.
You got a meeting.
Well, I'm kind of sad that Keith didn't answer a question. When I was coming here, I was like, man, I can't wait.
I totally have one. I have one.
We're way too far behind. We got to get him to another meeting. Button.
The merger of student affairs and all the things under student success, folks losing their jobs are not being, this being like service first, and being concerned that they don't know what's going to happen with their jobs because of the merger of the different areas. So can you speak really quickly on your vision for that and maybe put folks at ease a little bit about their jobs?
Yes, so the work that we're doing around the student success integrations and those things that I described is separate from service first. We don't expect that staff jobs and those things will be impacted. In fact, I know that they're not going to be impacted for the work that we're doing. What we are trying to do though is to say, how can we work closer together? How can we be better integrated in the work that we're doing? Does that answer the question for you? Kind of, sort of. Okay. Tell me what I missed.
There was a lot of concern that folks had of not knowing and being unsure about their jobs and how that looks like, with the merger. So it answers at surface level for sure. And I think may put some folks' concerns at ease, but expect probably more questions.
Okay. Yeah, but no, with the work that we're doing now, as I said earlier, we are doing an analysis, which is separate from the sort of student success integrations that we're doing. The campus health and the UNC health mergers are separate. So that's a separate sort of analysis that's being done. But in terms of the work that I've described with integrating the student success areas, what we've done is that we found efficiencies and optimizations through that integration and the sharing of services. Because one of the things that I found here is that there may be multiple programs that do the same thing, and through the work that we've done with connecting the dots, we've actually leveled up the resources and the abilities that folks have, but we've said you've got to work together, right? So if you're planning a campus orientation, then our admissions team, while they don't normally do orientation, maybe it's not that we need to hire more people for orientation. We just need to encourage our admissions team, which they're doing, to collaborate and we all work together. And so I've been really pleased with, admissions, enrollment, student affairs, and all of our folks who are student facing and serving students. Because as I said earlier, I can see that passion and everybody's just jumped in and identified ways we can work together and collaborate. So I couldn't be more honored to have the ability to be an architect of this sort of integrated ways in which we support students. And my last thing is, again, I want to say thank you so much for what you do. I want to thank you for the questions that you ask, how you engage the university. I think it's so critical to how we think about serving staff, but serving the institution and the state as a whole. So kudos to you. I really appreciate what you do.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate you being here. Welcome. All right, I'd like to and appreciate Linc and Joe and Jessica hanging around. I know we're running a little bit behind, but I will turn this over to Linc, who is online, to give us an HR update.
Yeah, thanks, Rebecca. Hello, everyone. I was planning to be there in person, but I did that thing where I got all the way to the AOB and realized I left my laptop at home. So uh, had to go back and get that, take care of that. So I'm feeling like a Monday today, but someday I'll be Saturday night, as the song goes. So wanted to give you a couple quick updates, and I'll turn it over to Joe for some benefits-focused updates. We do have slides, but I'm happy to share my screen if they can't be pulled up. I think I had sent those over to Matt.
Did you send this to me? Okay. We'll work on bringing those up.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and start
if you
talking
have
through.
them up, you should be able to share.
Okay, hang on.
While you're bringing those up, Jessica, if you want to take just a couple of minutes to hit a few highlights of our well-being, or do you want, or are you good, Linc?
I think I'm good.
Oh, you've got slides. Okay, never mind.
Yep. All right.
Linc's got it.
Pull them up. Hopefully they'll display shortly.
Good. Perfect.
All right. So for the first update, it is March, and not only does that mean the coming of the pollen as the temperatures increase, but it is also annual performance season that begins on March 10th. It runs through the 31st of March. Just as a reminder, this is a period provides an opportunity to reflect on accomplishments, to recognize contributions, and align on priorities for the year ahead. We will be sending out a kickoff communication next week outlining the key dates associated with the process, expectations, and available guidance. We are running some live workshops related to the performance season to help employees and managers prepare for the upcoming performance conversations. The one that's running currently is the STAR approach to self-assessment for employees. The final session we have scheduled for March 11th, and depending on demand, we may offer some additional sessions for that. We also have strategies for fair and effective appraisals for managers. You'll see the dates on the slides there for the sessions that we're offering. And then for additional resources and support focused on that, we do have a whole website set up around the performance management program. If you go to hr.unc.edu/performance, you can check out the information there. And I know we are short on time, so I'll go ahead and pitch it over to Joe. Because I know he has some critical benefits updates with you for you. So Joe.
Great. Thank you, Linc. I appreciate it. Do you mind running the slides for us?
I got it.
Thank you, sir. So good morning, everyone. And I'm Joe Williams, Senior Director of Benefits, Leave Administration, and Total Wellbeing here at the university. It's always a pleasure to be with you. And just want to give a few updates. And one of the things I'm really excited about, though I can't give a whole lot of information just yet, is that the Board of Trustees for the State Health Plan is doing on their March 17th meeting, they're voting to expand the preferred provider networks here in North Carolina. Now, what is the preferred provider? So if you remember, we had something called a clear pricing project network. And if you saw one of those network providers, you saw either a very discounted kind of copay or even a zero copay. The preferred provider network, very similar. But there's a savings of anywhere from $15 to $20 per copay when you see a preferred provider. And at that March 17th meeting, again, there is looking at expansion of about 10,000 additional providers adding into this network. One that you might really be excited about, but I can't say anymore because nothing's official till the 17th, till things get voted on. But again, we're very excited about that. And again, more to come. On our next slide. I also want to just give a quick update about Lantern. Many of you remember, of course, Lantern. We shared lots of information about Lantern during last year's open enrollment. The state health plan kind of changed things just a bit because they're working on really trying to expand North Carolina providers into this Lantern network. So one of the things that the state health plan did was they decided to sort of limit the travel to 150 miles or less. And there's not a whole lot of providers in North Carolina who are part of the Lantern network. Now, a lot of confusion went around. I was copied in and asked to respond to some of the committees even here on the employee forum. But a lot of confusion went around regarding, like, if I have to have a surgery, does this mean I can't get my surgery through the state health plan? Absolutely not. The surgery benefits, seeing providers, none of that has changed. Lantern was added in as kind of an added value type service. So for instance, if you have to have an elective surgery and you reach out to Lantern, there's a provider within the 150 miles, you can have the surgery done at zero cost to you. So there's a great advantage, of course, of trying to have a Lantern provider do your surgery if you want that. But if there's not a Lantern provider available, you still have obviously going through your deductible co-insurance aspects of seeing any provider, whether it's a UNC surgeon, a Duke surgeon, or whoever you want to use. So that choice is still there. Now, we just got notified, and you may have seen an email from the state health plan that Novant Health has now been added in. Novant Health has 19 hospitals across North Carolina. And because of this, they are now in the Lantern network. Now, does that mean that all 1,000 non-elective surgeries are going to be covered by Novant Health? We don't know yet. So, kind of more to come on that. I would suggest if you've got to have some kind of an elective surgery this year, that you do reach out and just call Lantern. If you got a member ID card from Lantern, great. If you don't have the card, you don't have to have it to call Lantern. Simply call Lantern and say, hey, I've got to have this surgery. Is there a provider available? And again, if there's a provider available within that 150-mile radius, awesome. You can have that surgery done. It will cost you zero. Okay? So again, it's a great benefit. Obviously, we want to be able to utilize that benefit. So I'm very happy the state health plan is continuing to expand the North Carolina Lantern network. And again, my understanding is from the state health plan that they're working on adding additional provider networks into Lantern. All right, next slide, please. This next one is more kind of the next two slides are actually just quick reminders. If you signed up for the MetLife legal plan during open enrollment, let me just encourage you to use the benefit. Sometimes we sign up for something, we sort of forget we have it, and a year goes by, we've been paying premiums through payroll deductions and realize, oh, I never even accessed that. The MetLife legal plan is actually a pretty good plan. You can get a full estate plan drawn up at no cost to you. You can reach out to local attorneys, have a 30-minute consult with them, no cost, get legal advice. They can do document reviews. If you get a speeding ticket, they'll represent you in traffic court at no cost. Court fees are your responsibility, but the attorney fee, again, the plan covers that. So again, a good benefit. So remember to access that benefit as you can. And my final slide is really more just a reminder about the flexible spending accounts. And so if you've had a healthcare flexible spending account or a dependent daycare flexible spending account, again, remember that the deadline to file 2025 claims is coming up. Now, I got to share a sad story because last year, a faculty member reached out to me in like May of last year and said, hey, I've got $5,000 worth of claims for 2024. And I tried to file those in and they denied them because I'm past the March 31 date. Okay. And indeed, there was nothing we could do about it. Okay. So again, this is kind of an IRS kind of a thing. Our state flexible spending account plan, has to comply with federal law. So again, unfortunately, that person had to sort of eat that $5,000. So it's very important though, if you have claims from 2025, you want to get those in by the deadline that's listed here on the slides. Okay, I'm going to pause here real quick. Again, I know we're pressed for time, but do I have any questions online or in the room?
I have a question, Rebecca. It's Julie. Hey,
Okay.
Joe, thank you so much for being here and for all the help you've given us on answering all these questions. We really appreciate it.
Sure.
I do have a couple questions about Lantern, and one of them is what happens if you're having your surgery 150 miles away, let's just say, or wherever it is, and you have complications? Are you supposed to go back to that place, or do you know what we're supposed to do?
At this point, I do not.
Okay.
Now, here's what I can kind of say though, is that to be a lantern provider, you have to have one of the lowest kind of complication rates in the industry or your specialty.
Oh, okay.
And that's an interesting thing because again, in some meetings I've been on with the state health plan about lantern, one of the things they've talked about is that complication rates are what drive up costs. In an insurance company, the state health plan, i.e., because it's a self-funded plan by our premiums and taxpayer dollars, again, that cost is driven up a lot by complications. So I think it really is important to have providers that have very low complication rates. So that's one good thing about Lantern. Now, can complications occur? Absolutely. I don't know exactly right now. I think it would depend on sort of the life-threatening aspect of it. You know, if it's an emergency type of thing, how that would be covered. I think we've got to get some more direction on that. But the state health plan is supposed to have some more information coming out shortly and hopefully have more details about kind of that more fine detail.
Okay, and the other part of my question is, so you're saying it's all, if you have your surgery done there, it's zero. But I've heard that they don't pay for like the pre-testing and all of that. Do we get like, before we choose this, will Lantern give us an explanation of what all is being covered and what's not?
Yes, our understanding is that when you talk with a Lantern person, again, if you start setting up a surgery, they will go over everything with you, is our understanding.
Okay.
And want to get to Timothy real quick, but just to cover something on the chat. With the 150-mile rule, if a staff member is willing to travel beyond that 150 miles and not be covered for the travel, can they still use a Lantern provider in another location?
At this point, no. So again, the way the Lantern benefit is working for state health plan, they're only going to allow that free surgery benefit for providers under the 150 hours. I asked that kind of same question to the state health plan. That's what I was told.
Thank you. Timothy? You answered it? Okay. All right. Annetta?
Thank you for the updates. I'm not sure if this has been published before, but how easy is it for us to get a list of those elective surgeries that Lantern covers? I've heard that it's only bariatric surgery.
Well, so the only Lantern, well, let me back up. The only surgery that's required for state health plan members to be done by a Lantern provider is the bariatric surgery. Everything else, you have the option to use any other surgeon or a Lantern surgeon as an option. The understanding is that over 1,100 types of surgeries are covered under Lantern. It's just, again, as they build out the provider network, Novant Health, for instance, what those surgeries will be. So it's really very specific to what's available kind of in this now future kind of 150-mile radius, what's available, surgeons, types of surgeries covered. So again, it's going to be a very individual call with Lantern. Yes, that's right. Mm-hmm.
All right. Oh, Megan?
Hi, Joe.
Last question.
Okay, I'll make it fast. I used Lantern, by the way, and it was awesome. But I was gonna ask if there's like a limit to how many surgeries you can do, because I'm like a 80-year-old and a 40-year-old body falling apart.
Yeah, for us, we've not heard any kind of like, a limit. I mean, if it's a non-elective surgery, I mean, if somebody who's addicted to having surgeries, maybe that might have an issue at some point. But our understanding is if you've got maybe multiple issues that are non-elective things that can be taken care of through those Lantern surgeries, you can use those Lantern providers. Great. Thank you so much. And I'm going to turn over to my colleague, Jessica.
Jessica, all yours.
An exciting event coming up.
One of my favorite events of the year.
Thank you. We're looking forward to seeing you. So it is go time. This is our month for our Total Wellbeing Expo. It is Wednesday, March 18th. So I did give you all a poster. If you want additional copies and you haven't requested them already, just let me know. Raise your hand as I'm leaving so I can stop by and give you some additional copies. But we're going to be again in Fetzer Hall, same location it's been in recent years. And of course, you'll have the Cobb deck to park in and come out and enjoy the festivities. parking is free. However, we have known that last year was brought to our attention that our attendance is exceeding the parking at Cobb Deck. So I do encourage you to carpool. I also want to let you know that bus routes are in RU, are running. They do stop in front of Fetzer. So do check out the bus routes if you're comfortable with taking the bus. TIA has graciously provided us with the donation for providing lunch and a salad bar at this event again. And know that that is a donation from TIA. We have 3 cooking demos this year. Healthy chicken salad. We have an herbal tea demo to help aid digestion, as well as an edamame and quinoa salad that is kidney friendly. We have 80 exhibitors in the exhibit hall this year, which is a few more than last year. And we have fitness and meditation classes throughout the entire day, starting at 11 all the way till 2 o'clock. So those include Tai Chi. We have a loving meditation, loving and kindness meditation, a mini sound bath, weight training essentials, and strike boxing. Chair massages. If we did send out that email to all employees on Monday and chair massages slots filled up in the first hour. So if you are registering for anything and you select chair massages on the registration, you're going to see it's not an error. If you read all the words in the message on the page, you'll see that if there are no times available, you're automatically put on the wait list and will be contacted if a slot opens up. If you do not hear from Miriam before the expo, always swing by room 104. You never know if there's no shows and there might be something that pops up for chair massages. We have our state health plan and Quest Diagnostics providing free wellness checks for state employees. I do encourage you to sign up for this. It's a really good, comprehensive, quick assessment of your health. You're going to get all your levels of your total cholesterol, your blood glucose, your blood pressure, and maybe the not welcomed BMI and waist circumference. But those are all part of the screening. It only takes 15 minutes. And if there are any issues, you know, that's when you're going to follow up with your doctor to get more screenings, more advice. But it's absolutely free. Appointments are encouraged because then you won't have a wait time. But walk-ins are certainly welcome, and those walk-ins the last appointment will be at 1:45. We have a slew of virtual opportunities, even more than usual, starting Monday, running through Friday. And our on-demand library is always growing this time of year as well. We have 12 volunteer opportunities still open. If you've not signed up to volunteer, I did not bring the t-shirt with me, sorry, but they are in, and an email will be going out soon to share details about when to pick up your t-shirt as well as when to participate in the orientation. Again, let me know if you need more copies of the posters. And just to let you know, we will have double the therapy dogs this year and a returning appearance by the Bouncing Bulldogs. And that is at 12:30. They will do their jump rope show at 12:30 to 12:45. And then finally, next slide. Oh, and I also, before we talk about Miles for Wellness, you can stay on this slide, but our theme for the Total Wellbeing Expo is Wellness from Head to Heels, and that was submitted by Amy Sigmund within the School of Dentistry. She is one of our wellness champions, and for the past 2 years, we've been reaching out to our wellness champions to submit their creative ideas for our slogan. So you'll see that on the bags, you'll see that on the t-shirts, and it's on our website as well. In addition to that, next Monday, this coming up Monday, is the start of our Spring Miles for Wellness Challenge. If you've been a team captain before, you've already seen these emails go out. It will be in the newsletter later today, but this is one of our 2 opportunities to come together, support each other, make a greater effort to give ourselves some self-care time and go out for a walk, increase those steps. Participation by our university has been tremendous and has grown significantly since I've been here. The overall state challenge, which is open to state universities and state agencies and community colleges, there are over 400 teams that participate. UNC contributes to 80 or more of those teams. So we're making up about quarter of the activity for the state challenge. And I love it when we win. There are some goodie bags and a trophy that they send you if your team does win the state challenge. So sign up for that. Your team has to be created by Monday at 5 p.m. However, if you don't have all teammates by that first day, you do have 2 whole weeks to get all 10 people on board and walking and motivating them. It's an 8-week virtual challenge, and we'll be visiting spring break hotspots this challenge. So that is March 9th through May 3rd, and I look forward to you participating. Questions for me? Questions about the expo? Well, I look forward to seeing you on the 18th.
All right, thank you so much. And it is a very fun event, and it does count as work time. We've got posters down here for those folks who are present. Feel free to bring those back. I would like to, since we are running a little behind, shift things just slightly. I'm going to ask for Scott Savage to come on down to discuss service first. I was going to have our team go over our listening sessions that we had in February, but we have a couple more coming up this month. And so I'm going to hold off on summarizing our listening session feedback until April 10th, rather. When we have our next meeting, we'll have a slightly broader bit of information. Yes, Sarah?
On that point, is there an alternative plan to share this information with the Service First team before the next general meeting? Because these were specific to the rollout that will be happening in April, and I think being timely about sharing that feedback is important.
Yes, I've shared the overview slides with Scott's team yesterday, and I was waiting for the green light from our Vice Chair, Natalia, to send the summary. And she's out for a family emergency this week, so I did not get that it was finalized just then, but that will be going out next week. So yes, those will be shared. Thanks for double checking on that. All right, Scott, I don't know if you want to just do a Q&A or if you want me to pull up your slides, I can do that.
I can go either way. So originally when we were planning, hello, good to see everybody again. Originally we were planning for the meeting, I had the general slides of updates, but Rebecca's advice was there may be enough questions at this point with things, and I can use the slides so I can do Q&A, or I can spin into my general updates around Service First.
I mean, I have a question, but we can. What? I was reading your latest monthly community update, and was curious if you could tell us. And to be fair, I'm self-interested in here because I'm in I think what will be a self-service unit. The self-service kickoff meeting that you all had, where you clarified. You clarified some KPIs or some standards through for the self-service groups. I was just wondering if you could share a little bit of detail about that, or if not, who we could ask.
No, it's completely fair game. As you all know, at the end of January, when we finalized the initial operating groups that are out online, one of the groupings was what we called self-service. And as the HR evaluation, which again, the framing of these other work streams that we've been talking about, the primary 4 that are underway right now is the one we've been talking about since December, the HR evaluation, which will really be that people level impact across each of those groupings. The second one that we've made a lot of effort on is the KPI and value dashboard, which I have a slide updating that. And Rebecca can send these out and you can see where that is. Oh, thank you. And then the next one is on process standardization with partnership with OE and getting feedback across campus of what processes would go into an operational excellence type of project or other ones that need to be stacked over the coming months to address different things that have just kind of been sitting for a while. The last one is workflow and technology enablement. And so that work stream is genuinely intended, and that survey will go to all the deans within the next week or two, is to figure out currently on campus, what are the systems that our team members use for the 5 functional areas. And as I mentioned last employee forum, there's a lot of inconsistency. You know, the ones like HR, it's pretty straightforward. Finance is pretty straightforward. But once you get to the other functional areas, it varies from a homegrown system to an established system that's supported by university ITS, to email, to verbal conversation. So just to be clear, those 4 work streams are what the slides will provide additional feedback on, and then the intent of the monthly communication out is to continue to give updates on where those things are. The self-service group, as that came into play January 30th, the steering committee felt like that would be a really good group to go ahead and kick off. And so we did. The self-service has really 6 different expectations that we'll be working with the deans, and mostly the deans and their designee, to start putting effort to. I kind of see the self-service group as a pilot, right? And so consistency of one of the questions I get routinely asked is, well, what's our baseline service now? And I led with that all the way back to August of last year. And every unit that I went into, one of the questions I would ask and my team would ask is, when's the last time you did a service survey? How many units on campus do you think actually sent me something?
ASOD does.
Dentistry is one. Right? And so that's one of the main baseline efforts that we're going to kick off with the self-service group to establish what their service baselines are. And then we'll extend that as the groupings for the other, the health affairs grouping, the professional schools grouping, the administrative groupings of establishing that baseline. The other things that the self-service group are going to kick off, and as I was sitting here, our first meeting of the operating team that's going to be meeting at a minimum a monthly basis is to start assessing the KPI and metrics that external individuals have helped us find, internal people have reviewed, Stack has reviewed, and we continue to socialize what is this kind of summary of key metrics that we'll work on. And the self-service group will be the first units on campus where, in addition to the baseline quality survey, we'll be using those metrics on a prospective basis over this quarter, April 1 to June 30th. You'll also note that one of the expectations of self-service is around labor and non-labor. Okay? And so the question that I would routinely get on the self-service group is, well, it's just going to be status quo. And that's not been the intent from a service first perspective, nor has it been any of the deans that are in that self-service expectation. I mean, they've been very welcoming to get kicked off. And I look forward to continuing providing updates to employee forum around the progress, and particularly made for the self-service groups. So what does non-labor and labor look like? So labor, pretty straightforward. Based off of what we're evaluating for the groupings, the self-service units will go through the same thing. On the non-labor side, one of the main opportunities, if you think about the functional area of finance and procurement, the reason we anchored procurement in there specifically is because we feel like there's a lot of opportunity to continue elevating what I call strategic supply management principles and hardwiring them in across campus. And so we've already kicked off with non-labor evaluations for self-service in university communications and IT, with IT being one of the largest non-labor expenses that right now the campus faces. So that's the general update on all the work streams that are in progress, high level, and then where we are with self-service entities. Yes, ma'am.
So some of these questions are going to be because I was at the listening session, and so I'm just carrying forward things that I am not admitting you have not seen yet. So one is, you mentioned the baseline. It is, of course, something that we've been asking about because, benchmarking data, like you could show progress if you know where you started from. And I heard you say that you weren't provided any. One of the things that came up at the listening session was that if we don't have initial benchmarks, then are these changes based on assumptions rather than data that we are currently not being efficient? And I'm trying to see where that would not be the case. So I guess some of the question is, do you have some kind of generalized baseline, and will that be shared on the dashboard as you go and collect further information?
So let me try to peel apart that question. So one, just to be clear, I didn't get none, right? Just to be really clear. The 4 or 5 that we received were all across the board in terms of style. And then if you really are into survey building, many of them weren't really grounded in questions that have been validated, which is fine, right? I'm not trying to build an academic rigor survey. I want to build an operational survey. And so we've been working with the Odom Institute, and all of those service surveys to really compile them into the best initial service survey is intended what we will launch across the self-service entities initially. We'll vet all of the questions and see how that goes, and then we'll roll that out as an additional piece to those that are doing it, like Adams School of Pharmacy does one, College of Arts and Sciences does one, School of Medicine does one, and continuing to try to enhance that baseline service survey. On the KPI and metrics, the lens that Service First is trying to have is not a traditional external, here's the benchmark, you've got to get to it, right? And the way we're trying to set it up is to really be able to use what would be that April 1 to June 30th time period as the service surveys are going out, but to start getting baseline progress or where people are around the KPIs that have been selected. Over the course of those first 3 months, really into July 1, the first quarter of next fiscal year, our intent is to be able to use what we call internal benchmarking across the units. And just to share that, because there's some best practices on campus. And then there are some places that, they just have always done it that way. Simultaneously, what we've been partnering with, trying to bring in the external perspective, is we've done a really good due diligence with the other universities across the US who have done shared services. So we've had multiple phone calls with many of those that we list as peers on our website. And there's a few that are on version 3.0 of their shared services journey. And they've continually improved over the course of that from their perspective. So that, in terms of your question with regard to the ramp up, the service survey, how the KPIs that right now are floating around, and you can see those, the intent is to gather prospective data from the units that we're monitoring internally. We do want to establish benchmarks that will be composed of external ones that we can get to, and then also internal ones. And that's how, at least our perspective on what the future state Service First value dashboard will look like. It will have that retrospective history from UNC-Chapel Hill, and then prospectively we can monitor it for improvement or areas that are really good and celebrate that. So we will establish like a baseline, but at the same time, the hope is, how do you define those exemplars? And I'm not trying to lead us to where everything's got to be 100%. That's not been my journey. I know I'm in an environment that there's a lot of perfectionists and we want to get there. But that isn't where the university is trying to establish where everything's got to be at 100%. And we'll use the data we've got to be able to drive that decision making.
Can you go back to the slide that showed who's going to do shared services and who's going to do no, the one that had the list. Yep. So when I look at this slide, if you take the College of Arts and Sciences, the School of Medicine, that's like 3/4 of the students and staff of the university right there. They're all staying self-service with your new KPIs. So it seems like we've done a lot of work on shared services for a tiny part of the university, besides marketing and communication. But am I correct that the vast majority of the university is going to be on self-service?
So in terms of number of units, no. In terms of scale of units, about 53% of the overall expenses that we're reviewing would be in these self-service entities. That was why it was really critical as self-service was getting momentum November, December, and then if you recall, right before the holidays, we had a meeting where we approved a different version of this. Came back, hence why the January 30th approval of a few more units on here. And it was really critical to establish those 6 expectations because we wanted to foster the same expectations that we're going to have on these other groupings with the self-service units. And so that's what's intended with those initial 6 and then the different initiatives that are underneath those.
Amy?
First, I did want to just say I really appreciated your comments on taking stock of what systems different schools are using, because that is something that has continually been on my mind with the dental school and running a healthcare enterprise. So I am very excited that that's looped in. Also, love that y'all are working with the Odom Institute regarding how to, measure success or an efficiency of services, and definitely recognize that not all of that data is really validated at this point. I had a couple questions, but I think that one that is related to something that you just shared was regarding peer institutions. And I think in the success that they've had with shared services models. And I think that I'm wondering if when you looked at peer institutions, if you were also looking at which schools were grouped into which areas regarding self-service or shared services, and if you found that other universities did have graduate schools or professional programs delivering healthcare under a shared services model.
It's a good question. And I'll carry you back to slides that we've shared with Employee Forum a few times that PFM, our third-party partner, built, and it lays out what we reviewed with each of them. What we found in that peer group is it's a mix. Some include the professional schools with revenue generation, the example that Adams is, but also the School of Medicine with its revenue generation.
Are you able to share the report that has what was found regarding what schools?
Yeah, we'll send those. They've been sent out to Employee Forum. We'll send
I'll include that in the meeting summary.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And that external, what I'm calling environmental scan is ongoing. So you'll see some slides in there that are blank. And the intent with PFM is to continue to try to get, all of our identified peers, which we've had some success on. And if there are specific questions as it relates, your example with dentistry, we can have, peel that back even more, but that baseline will give you at least a gist of what's currently in scope and then what they're doing. And you'll find a bunch of different models.
Okay, I love the idea of the benchmarking against other universities, but just in this case, I know how unique the dental school is, and I just want to communicate that I'm scared.
Yeah.
Okay, Elizabeth, I'm going to take your question as the last question for today, because we've got about 6 minutes left. And that will give everyone so far that's raised their hand at least one opportunity to ask questions.
Thanks, Rebecca. I'll try to reword these questions into ones that go deeper and set a stage for being able to get real answers. How will we find out how many positions under this model, which I appreciate being able to be part of, self-service? How will we find out how many of those positions migrate from University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill to UNC Healthcare? Because there's a lot of potential in there from Health Sciences Library, School of Public Health, research, and we already see School of Medicine positions migrating over there. So it's not whether, it's how many, and how do we find out how many of those positions are going over there and what the impact is. So don't even answer that right now, because I think it's something that just keeps coming up. And if there were, it's come up so many times that I'm not trying to reject anything in these presentations, but I'm saying it remains an unquantified and unanswered question. And then the other future question, since we really don't have time to go into that today, is what does labor mean? What does that really mean? That's a new term and it just popped up and it hasn't been present in these evaluations and discussions before. So it's not like I'm nervous about that, but I just realized there was a lot of words used around that without an explanation of what it is and how it differentiates from the other thing that you say it isn't. So I guess that's a future discussion also. And if you have any information that addresses that in depth so we know what the context of that term is, we would love to see it. And thanks for being here.
So is that a question I can answer, or are you just making comments?
I don't think we have time, but if you could please send this forum a definition of the context of the use of the term labor.
Yeah.
In the hospital, it means a woman giving birth. Historically, it means the people that get work done. We technically talk about labor hours as effort in human resources. So I just realized I don't really know what that means, and I'd like to.
Yeah. So
Go ahead.
give
Yeah,
2
please.
minutes. So one of the requests that we had was a glossary of terms. And so that's going to be on the website if it's not already. In the alignment of the HR evaluation, that's labor evaluation, not the LABOUR, it's LABOR, labor, right? So the workforce. What's in scope is non-faculty positions, salary, and benefits. That's how it'll be defined online. And so when I talk about the work streams, it really is trying to embed those gravitational themes that we want to be mindful for throughout the service first journey. The one that we kicked off initially was that HR evaluation, which is the most in-depth work stream we've got. And I know Linc is on, his team is leading the initial HR evaluations. We have updates for that. You know, the UCOM group is definitely further along. And so when I come back next time and we talk about implementation of things for April 1, UCOM will be one of those.
And if you want to just kind of maybe close out with kind of a summary of where we are in the timeline of what's happening now, what's being implemented, and where each of those areas is in the implementation timeline.
Yeah, so the timeline that's been online hasn't changed, right? So we're in the quarter of what we've called implementation planning all the way through March 30th for phase 1 implementation. When we were in December, the thought was that the HR evaluations across all 5 functional areas would happen so we can make educated decisions on what goes into play April 1. That hasn't progressed as quickly as we hoped for. And so the updates around what is getting implemented, you know, UCOM is one that I would say is near finalization, and the impacted individuals for that functional area, that commitment to the deans has been, we would start having unit level conversations with impacted individuals and leaders as early as the end of February, which we missed, and the beginning of March, which we're in. Now, the initial calendaring of that was the hope that we would do all 5 functional areas together, and that's just not going to happen. But so where the progress is, you know, we're still in that implementation planning. I look forward to coming back. The April 1 implementation, what you'll see is KPI metrics across campus will be, you know, things that we're targeting implementing. Self-service grouping will be targeted in terms of implementation April 1. And then for the functional group areas, UCOM, as I mentioned, and then for the other functional area that we've talked about kicking off for the HR evaluation, IT, with the administrative grouping. So that has been the focus for IT. That means research administration, research administration, HR, finance, and procurement are still pending the HR evaluation. So just to be very direct and put a pin in it, the unit level people impact back to employee forum, those are some difficult conversations. And so we will do our very best to give as transparent of impact to this group, but there are going to be conversations that are staggered with unit level discussions at this point that is just, kind of the uncertainty and process that we're under right now. That's, at least from my perspective, how I've been stewarding the conversations.
Which we respect. I just want to add one, again, from the listening session, one plug exactly about that. I appreciate that these conversations, especially knowing that reduction in force may be happening, will be sensitive and you don't want to just post blanket statements. But I will just name that the things being shared on the website and in these sessions and in your PowerPoint slides, while informative, are unclear. So we had several people at the listening session say, I am under a group that may or may not be impacted. And my manager, as of March 1, does not know where we'll be in April 1. And understandably, that's a really short timeline to figure anything out. So I'm just sharing, again, not needing an answer, but I did want to share that the lack of clarity in the specific, especially for groups that have separate funding, external funding, are they impacted? And that element of the process is really unclear, especially given how close implementation is.
Yeah. And again, that umbrellaing of all those conversations is under that one work stream, HR evaluation. I keep harping on that, I'm trying to embed vocabulary and glossary of what we're trying to steward. And my ownership and accountability back to this group is to show up and to provide the information. And I'm committed to doing that. And so each month as we progress, there will be that level of detail that all of us want, and to be able to share that, not to dismiss the other work streams, which at least the intent for Service First and improving quality and service and workflow and technology enablement, all are things that have been dragging campus for decades. I mean, it just has. And so that's the exciting part of the role for me, is really promoting that.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And I would like to suggest that it might be helpful for your team and the team that has been leading our listening sessions to possibly sit down between now and our next meeting on April 10th to kind of go over those results that I'll send to you as soon as Natalia's back in.
Any meeting you invite me to, I'll be at.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And you have been, so I do appreciate that.
I appreciate that. I've got some track record with it. So
you do.
Yeah.
And I know it's been really, I really appreciate folks sticking around. I know Service First kind of came last today. One of my challenges as chair this year has been to try to balance the significance, thank you. Didn't mean to just kind of silence you and send you off into the sunset, but I guess I just did. So if you can stick around as we wrap up, I'd appreciate it. We've got a couple more things on the agenda, but I understand if you need to step away because it is 11:30-ish. My challenge as chair is really to figure out how do I balance making sure that we have Service First at each of these meetings, but also not lose sight of the fact that there are many other things that are going on campus that I really want to make sure our staff can hear about. And that included having the Provost introduce himself so we could get a chance to know him and then know a little bit more about the changes going on in student success and to give us a chance to meet Vice Provost Orr as well. So I know it's a challenge for me, and keeping to time is also a challenge. So I will continue to do my best to do that. The only other things we have on the agenda for our consent agenda, do I have any committees that wish to pull out an update? Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Blood drive.
All right, we're going to pull out blood drive. Anyone else? Seeing none. Do I hear any opposition to approving our consent agenda? All right, then I will turn it over to Renata for our blood drive update.
Sorry, guys, I'll keep this really quick. I just wanted to make an announcement that we do have our Carolina blood drive coming up. It is going to be April 28th. I know we had a discrepancy with the date. We had an issue with the academic calendar changing, but the blood drive will be at the Smith Center on April 28th. I did want to put a call out. Each year we do a spotlight highlight story of someone in the Carolina community whose family or them directly have been impacted by donor blood. If this resonates with you and you're someone who would like to share your story, please email me. We would love to highlight you with our Drive marketing campaign. And the drive is going great. Come out, donate. If you haven't signed up, you should do it now. Thank you. Bye.
That was amazing. All right. Now, that is the only committee update that we have. I do want to say thank you to everyone that has stuck through a very long meeting. I know we covered a lot of ground, and we will continue to have Service First updates, probably a longer one in April. And I will work with Scott Savage and his team to put together an interim meeting to discuss the feedback from our listening sessions. And Sarah, I'll be sure that you are in on that, since you've been key to facilitating our listening sessions. Thank you all. I hope you have a great spring break, which I think is in 2 weeks for most of the campus. For the law school, it's next week, so I'm very confused as to what spring break is right now. And my child has 2 different ones, so who knows all of March's spring break in my brain. I should take them all off. But do I have a motion to adjourn?
This is
Do I have a
Teresa. I'll
second?
make a motion.
Okay, we got lots of motions and seconds. Do I have any opposition to adjourning? Seeing none, my hand is my gavel. We are adjourned. Thank you all. And just for the recording, before you stop the recording, Matt, I'm just going to make the announcements that did not get recorded at the beginning, so they are on the recording for those watching. We have an upcoming Vice Chancellor's Representatives meeting on Thursday, March 12th, an Executive Committee meeting on Tuesday, March 17th, both of those via Zoom and by invitation. Our STAC meeting will be on Wednesday, April 1st, and our next full body meeting will be Friday, April 10th at 9 here in the Adams School of Dentistry. And online, please note that is not the first day of, or first Friday of April, simply because the first Friday is a holiday for the university. Delegate nominations are welcome. If you are interested in joining the forum, we encourage you to self-nominate or have somebody nominate you. Only one nomination is required. The votes is where it matters. We also sent out an email requesting nominations for the Peer Awards and the Rebecca Clark Award, so we can nominate and recognize the amazing staff we have here at the university. And then to close out, the very first thing I said was welcoming everybody here, and then also just simply sharing that in response to the opening remarks from the initial meeting, I did receive invitations from the Chancellor and from the Vice Provost for Finance and Operations. I have met with them, and I am looking forward to our continuing collaboration. All right, that should wrap up what wasn't caught on the recording, and I hope everyone has a great March.